Hello folks, this time around I want to talk about Lab 1. So this is going to be the first work that you get to do on your project for the term, and I just want to run through kind of the basics of what this is going to look like. So let's see where we can get to here. As always, the official details are going to be on the lab page, and what we're doing in this video is just giving you a bit of an overview of a bit of a rundown of how things should feel. So if you go to the course webpage and then work your way down to the lab section, you'll find links for the Lab 1 specs. So that's the webpage for it. And then of course the various videos and slides for it that haven't been posted yet at the time that I'm recording this, but those should be up and active by the time you see this. So if you go to the lab page, again, you're going to find all of the gory details. You'll find links for, the quick summary of Git if you need to do some tweaking of what's happening with getting your repository and submitting it, that kind of thing. Again, webpage for talking about Git submission. And a quick summary of the things that you're going to be running through with this particular lab. And I'll talk about these things as we get further into the video here. But you are going to need to be careful to follow these things pretty much in order and make sure you get each step right before you move on to the next one. There are going to be parts of this that blow up if you miss a step or do things in the wrong order. So if you start digging through the instructions, you'll find that they are laid out pretty much step by step, especially for this first lab. Later on, things will get a little bit less cut and paste. But do make sure you read each of these things through carefully. Make sure you understand what it's supposed to be doing. Make sure you understand the Git instructions and whatnot that we're working with. And take a look around. Usually in these steps I'll have a note on how you can make sure that things worked okay. So do make sure that you go through and follow that. All right, so in this first lab, part of those first couple of steps are that you're going to be going through our usual process for creating your initial copy of the project repository. So you're going to be going through and forking and cloning a Git repository. And again, if you take a look in those steps, that's going to be these first couple of steps. And essentially steps 0 through 2 are going to go through getting you to get your copy of the repository. Once you move on from that, you're going to be experimenting a bit with the demo program. So I'm going to provide you with a makefile that will let you compile the program, create an executable, and just start playing with it. So again, this is a version of the program that I'm supplying. Later on, you're going to be modifying the source code that actually creates this thing. For this first lab, a lot of what we're trying to do is just give you a chance to play with the program itself, get a feel for what the quad trees and items are doing, and to play with some of the Git stuff. So we're going to be doing some branching and merging in the Git repository. And again, we will have discussed all this material in the lectures as we plow our way along. So you're going to be creating a branch of the repository, doing some editing in the branch, doing some editing in the original repository, saving all these things, doing your adds and your Git adds and your Git commits and whatnot, merging them back together eventually. And if you're following the steps correctly, this is going to create a merge conflict that you're going to have to resolve. And then eventually pushing the final result so that I can see it over on our servers and mark it and handle all those sorts of things. So again, everything is laid out pretty step by step in the course webpage, right? The process to go through and use the makefile to compile it, the kinds of things I want you to do in terms of experimentation, and I'll talk about the man page in just a second, the process for going through and creating branches, switching back and forth between the branches, the steps that I want you to take to create this merge conflict. And there's going to be a bit of experimentation, a bit of playing with just some basic bash commands as well, just to make sure that folks are seeing some of the things that we're talking about in the lectures. All right, so in terms of getting ready for it, again, make sure you're up to date on the lecture videos because we're going to use all of this stuff in the lab. Go through the videos and the web pages for Lab 1, right, the stuff that I'm talking about now, and the Git submit videos and whatnot from last week. Make sure in particular that you're up to date with the Git and version control material that we talk about in the lectures in week 2, because it is all stuff that we're going to use. Make sure that you've gone through the project webpage and the standards webpage for the project and watched the videos for those. Again, just to make sure that you know what's going on. Again, if you're watching this, you're probably taking a look at the Lab 1 webpage as well, but that's all stuff that I want you to go through. Make sure you've gone through the video on how to do Git submit, right? How to fork and clone your repository, the basic troubleshooting, and just follow through the lab pretty much step by step. Hopefully things should be good. Again, you're going to go through and compile this demo program. So there's a command issued in the, or shown in the lab webpage that will let you use the make file that's provided for you to compile the program. You will see there's a bunch of .o files in the repository when you first grab it. Don't delete any of those, because those are what's being used to actually compile the executable, and you don't have any way to recreate them. Right? In this first lab, I'm just providing you with the .o files, and you're just compiling them together. So don't remove anything, don't delete anything from the repository. And once you've had a chance to experiment with the demo program, see how it works, see what it does, I'm going to get you to write up essentially a little help page for the user and put it in man page format. So, right, man for manual is the kind of Unix, Linux way of providing help page access. And the way it works is that the format of the file that contains the man page information is a little on the weird side. So what I've done is in your project repository, I've created a subdirectory that's got a demo file in it that's the man page for this particular program. You're going to be editing that to actually, and you'll see that there's little things like your name here, right? So you're going to edit that to fill in appropriate information for the man page. And essentially all you're trying to do is not mess up the syntax that's in there for the man page highlighting. But other than that, it'll give you a little bit of a chance to play with the man pages and play with what these things actually look like if you want to work with one, how they get the syntax highlighting that's desired. In some of the later steps in the lab, once you've actually played with the demo a little bit and you've got things set up more or less the way you want, then you're going to be running some bash commands that are going to be creating and modifying files in your Git repository. And so essentially these steps are what are creating different versions of the files in different branches of the repository that will eventually create the merge conflict that we want to create and resolve. So again, the biggest thing here is to make sure you understand what the commands are doing, make sure you enter them correctly, and don't accidentally skip any steps, because it will mess up if you skip some, especially if you skip some of your adds or commits. You're going to find that you don't get a merge conflict in the end. All right. And at the very end, the last couple of steps in the lab are focused on making sure that you can push the changes that you've made locally back to our central Git server so that I can pull them from there and actually mark your work. So again, biggest thing is, oops, see if we get the right slide here. Make sure you go through the steps pretty much in sequence. And at the very end, don't forget to push everything back. These last couple of steps, you'll notice it's got a git push origin and then with the all flag in there. Do make sure you use that, because you are trying to push multiple branches back as part of your repository, and we just want to make sure that all winds up back someplace where I can see it and play with it. Okay, I think that's everything. Again, we'll have our usual question and answer session in the lab time itself, so you can ask me questions if any of this doesn't make sense. But hopefully things can work through relatively smoothly here.